Okay, so this is this is me, Fozia, recording my half of the group presentation for Animation Studio. Okay, so a quick recap of our project. The genre we picked was comedy, and again we wanted it to be a blend of both our styles. So again, me and Nora, our drawing style, we aim for more stylized art and sculpting, and again we both like to incorporate, you know, brighter colors and more of just a lighter hearted feeling in general into our art. And again, we both have a love for games, and one game we shared in common was Minecraft. So we wanted to capture that blocky, low poly aesthetic of Minecraft into our film. And one idea we had was a essentially a parody of a survival guide. So it would be a vlog, and then so we came up with the Idiot's Guide to Survival. Some so some examples in the industry I looked at were, say, for example, the Blair Witch Project, specifically for its mockumentary tone and parody techniques. And another was The Office and their talking head interviews, where you'd have one of the main characters addressing the camera, addressing the audience, and this reflects in our animation because we have moments where either of the main character, they are addressing the audience, and they are, you know, trying to give tips quite confidently, as if they're good at the task, but then as an audience you get to see them fail miserably, like in the next few scenes. So at the top left is my group of photos which I accumulated, and again I put down pictures of you know, Legos and Roblox and Moshi Monsters. So these most of the things here are more like children's games, children's toys, because I just love the use of, you know, bright colors, and I really wanted to capture that, capture almost the I guess the fun, the childish essence into our film, especially since our characters, mine and Nora's characters are chibis, and I'll explain what essentially the chibi style is soon. So here's some shots of the storyboards Nora did. So the character at the top is my character Fu, and she's essentially meant to be like a little caricature, like of myself, and essentially she is someone who takes herself too literally, displays way too much confidence, but in reality we see just how clumsy she is. I mean, my character ends up setting herself on fire while she's trying to create a fire with sticks. She ends up running after a coconut and ends up slipping off the cliff. Again, she believes she's a survival expert, as displayed by her, you know, all her tactical gear she's wearing. You know, she has the gloves, she has the boots. It's all brightly colored so you can spot her in the wild. But again, like as the film progresses, you realize just how incompetent she is at everything. Um, but um, what I wanted to but in addition to all of that, again, my character was drawn in the chibi style. So essentially, like the chibi characters, like they're just little, like baby looking characters. So they always have like big heads and like big sparkly eyes. Like, essentially, they look like babies, and because like they look cute, they're endearing, and they often like evoke like or a maternal or like a paternal instinct in the audience. And again, because of that, that generates attraction from the audience, like for the character. Here's just some different pose designs like I wanted to play with, just to experiment, just to see but this was during term one. I just essentially wanted to see what the character could look like in different scenarios, like if I was able to push the character further, like at least aesthetically in any way. Again, these were two environment concept art pieces I did on Procreate. So I did the two on the right. So the top right is of the beach scene, where thingy, which is at the start of the animation, and the bottom is of the forest cliff type scene that you see later on in the film. So again, when it came to texturing, so my job was to texture, well, to model and texture the forest scene, and I did that on Maya. But again, unfortunately, because of time constraints, I had to pass that over to Nora in the end. So the two initial renders I have on the right, that's the work I was able to produce. But again, there was a bit of, but then there was a lack of cohesion with the beach scene, and that was primarily like my own mistake, just because it wasn't really, at least the style, like texture wise, it wasn't aligning with what Nora had created for the beach scene. So in the end, I had to pass that over to her to ensure there was cohesion, and so that it looked like they were part of the same world. To help with the animating, I took some pictures on the right of myself in different poses off the storyboard. So there's myself running, there's myself crouching with two pens that were to double as sticks. There's one of myself thingy running away from the camera. This was then imported into Procreate, and then I would draw over that just to help kind of figure out where my character would go, how I'd begin animating the scene. And just for reference, all my animation scenes, they were drawn at 12 frames a second. In terms of my progress here, just some single PNGs I've taken from some of my scenes. And then in terms of my evaluation for the project, I do believe I was able to demonstrate my ability as a lead animator within a production pipeline. But in all honesty, my biggest drawback was my time management, especially when it came down to term two, because I was really struggling with just balancing deadlines, and then balancing the deadlines we did have for term two um alongside the remaining production work I had for my animation studio work. So for example, for animation studio, we had planned to start animating be like mid-January and have the scenes completely finished by the beginning of March. Unfortunately, that just wasn't the case. I wasn't able to start animating until around February, and then again I finished in March, and as a result of just as a result of my time management, I lost around a month's time of being able to animate, and just as a result, it meant that my final output was 16 seconds of film, as opposed to whereas it should have been 40 seconds. But because of all of this, I wanted to pivot and ensure that the scenes I was able to animate, that they were of quality, that there was enough keyframes, and like they were smooth, everything was colored correctly, just to ensure that it was still a good reflection of my 2D animating technical ability. But again, moving forward, I will ensure that I really need to improve my planning and just structuring of a project. And again, just ensure that I am communicating any worries, even if they do seem small, a bit earlier on. Because throughout the project, there were just quite a few, like just quite a few roles, such as animating, I'm sorry, no, modeling some props, but because of time management, I wasn't able to complete them. So again, this was something that then Laura had to come in and take from me. So again, moving forward, I will ensure that any worries I do have about my own output, I will put these forward like very early on.